So now it's past 12 p.m, so good afternoon and welcome everyone. We'll get started on the session now. Thank you so much for joining us today for our MAP Velocity Ask Me Anything session. My name is Hannah and I'll be your host for today. I'm the Marketing and Events Coordinator for the Melbourne Entrepreneurial Centre, which is the home of entrepreneurship at the University of Melbourne. I'm thrilled to be joined by Rory McNeice, our Velocity Program Manager, and the amazing Ingrid Jones, founder of Journal With Ingrid and one of our Velocity cohort members from 2022. So before we start, let's just kick off with some housekeeping. Please, if you can keep your microphone on mute for now, but feel free to have your cameras on. A heads up that this session will also be recorded and uploaded to our MAP YouTube channel later on. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the country where I'm talking to you from today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and recognise their continuing connection to the land, waters and culture. I pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders joining us today. Today's Ask Me Anything session will give you an opportunity to learn all about Velocity from Rory, plus maybe some handy application tips. And then following this, you'll get the very special chance to hear a behind-the-scenes look into the program from Ingrid. We will then, of course, finish off the session with a Q&A. Feel free to write down any questions you want to ask Rory or Ingrid for the end to get the most out of this session. Right, so I'll now like to pass things over to Rory, who will take you through and give you a bit of a rundown of the Velocity program.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Just give me a moment while I click some buttons, get some slides on the screen. And we will get started. Can everyone see that? Yes, love a good thumbs up. Excellent feedback already. All right, welcome. My name is Rory. I'm the Velocity Program Manager. I run Velocity and I will be your host if you're successful in your application. Today I'm going to run through a couple of things, a quick overview of the Accelerator Program, Velocity itself. We'll talk through the application and as Hannah said, we'll hear from Ingrid as one of the founders who's come through the program, and then there's an opportunity to ask some questions. So in the interests of efficiency, let's talk about MAP. MAP is the oldest university startup accelerator in the country. It's been around since 2012 and in that time, as you can see by the numbers, we've had a very successful career with over 240 startups supported in various ways, $250 million in investment and revenue generated, and my faces are in front of my names, there we go, 1,500 jobs created as well. As an accelerator program, obviously, we're taking businesses that have found a lot of their product market fit, developed early customers and helping them grow and scale their businesses. But back in around 2016, we realized that there was a gap, that we were helping these founders who'd already found their way, but there wasn't really any opportunity for them to find their way in the first place. So that's a big part of why Velocity exists. Velocity as a program was set up primarily to support early stage, high potential founders. And the way that we do that, sorry, wrong slide. And we've done that and helped out over 230 founders through the program from 160 startups, which has been very exciting over the course of those sort of 5 or 6 years. And it's been a fantastic way for us to help introduce them to the entrepreneurial ecosystem and help them find their feet. One of the important things that we do through Velocity is help prepare others to go through other accelerator programs. And as I mentioned, that's how Velocity as a program got started, trying to help prepare people to come through our own Melbourne Accelerator Program. But we're also very excited to see that alumni from Velocity have gone on to dozens of other accelerators and to great success through those accelerators. And we see that as a very positive outcome and a very viable pathway to come through a program like Velocity, establish those entrepreneurial fundamentals, and then find an accelerator program to help you grow and scale your business afterwards. Through those sorts of programs, teams coming through Velocity have raised over $8.9 million in funding, generated more than $6.5 million in revenue, and created 220 jobs, which is very exciting to see from some of those early stage companies because we know that there's such a low success rate at that early stage. We also believe in building out a very strong and diverse cohort with founders coming from a range of different industries and backgrounds, and we're very proud that here with Velocity, we have had 52% of the business that have come through Velocity be female founded, and 48% focus primarily on driving social impact. In terms of what Velocity does and why it exists, we see its purpose to help founders speed up their search for problem solution fit and to discover first customers. And what we mean by that is taking an idea that might be in its earliest stages and really understanding who is it out there that really cares about this problem being solved, and how are you going to deal with their real needs to provide value to them in a way that they're going to want to come and buy your product or service. In terms of the structure of the program, it's a $500 program cost, and for that $500, you get access to our structured workshops, which are run once a week, as I'll get into in a moment, but also mentoring from entrepreneurs and experts, and you get to be part of our MAP alumni community. It's an opportunity to engage with other founders who've come through both Velocity and the Accelerator on an ongoing basis after the program's completed. For 2023, our first program cohort will be running from the 27th of April through to the 13th of July. We will be running workshops on Thursday evenings from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. And we intentionally try to keep this outside of business hours because we know that at this early stage, a lot of founders are juggling another part-time job or a full-time job while they're trying to explore the idea of, is this business something that I can consider leaving my day job to pursue full-time? So we intentionally bring it outside of business hours onto a Thursday evening to try and make that opportunity available for people who are working full-time. Other than the workshops, key parts of the program, as I mentioned, mentoring from MAP alumni and industry specialists. It's a great way to advance your business, to learn from people who've been through those challenges before and really understand the industries that you're working in. Towards the end of the program, we have the Velocity Showcase, which is an opportunity to debut, your startup in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. 10 of the teams that are coming through Velocity will have the opportunity to present here at Melbourne Connect in our forum in front of hundreds of audience members who are a mix of investors, supporters, and early stage founders interested in seeing you and your businesses. And of course, ongoing beyond the end of the program, there's the opportunity to engage with MAP alumni through mentoring and networking and maintain that relationship with us to continue to grow your business. This is a pretty indicative example of the kind of topics that we cover through Velocity. I'm not going to go into too much depth and detail because this is actually something that's always under revision based on feedback from previous cohorts, so is likely to change even just in terms of some of the ordering of things. But as you can see, we tend to cover sort of an introduction to the business model. What is your business model? Why is it structured in a certain way? And what might it look like as your business grows and changes? Customer discovery and development in terms of understanding who is the person who's going to buy your product and what do they care about and how are you making sure you're delivering value to them. Systems mapping, looking at an overview of where do you fit within your particular industry, who are your competitors, who are your collaborators, and what are the structural things you might need to be aware of in terms of how your business will grow. Minimum viable products and intellectual property is looking at what's that quick and dirty way you can test those hypotheses around your customer and your market. Intellectual property being an overview of what do you need to know about patents, trademarks. And we talk through go-to-market strategy, understanding, well, with those first customers, how are you going to reach them? We look at human capital in terms of who is your team and who are the advisors and supporters you can bring in around you to help you grow that business. Marketing and pricing, pretty straightforward. Fundraising, looking at whether or not venture capital is suitable for your business and what are the things to be aware of if you're planning to go down that path. Pitching and storytelling is always my favorite because it's an opportunity to figure out not just what is your business, but how are you going to present that to people? How do you tell the story of your business in a way that engages them and really gets them to come along on the journey with you, to want to be a long-time supporter. Reflections and next steps is an opportunity to think through, well, what will you do in the 6 to 12 months after the program? And then, of course, we have the showcase at the end where 10 of the teams present, and then a little celebration for all the participants afterwards. In terms of where we are in the application timeline, applications are closing this Sunday, 26th of March. It's an online application. There's a 3-minute pitch. We'll jump into that in a few minutes. From there, if you're successful in that first stage, we move into interviews on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of April with some of our team. That's an opportunity for us to get to know you and really make sure that we're able to help you and support you through the program. And then normally we'd have a little bit more time, but Easter in the middle of this time means that you'll be getting offers made on the 6th of April if successful. And then the program, as mentioned, runs from the 27th of April through to the 13th of July on Thursday evenings. In terms of the online application, there's 3 main sections. The first is around your startup and your eligibility and details. This is just to get an idea of what are you working on, what's the business idea, and what stage are you at. The second is more about you as a founder, because Velocity is actually a founder-focused program. We completely understand that at this early stage, you might come in with one idea, discover that there's no market or no customer, or that your solution isn't viable. And that might mean the death of that business, but that's okay, because you as a founder are learning valuable skills that you can apply to the next idea. So we want to learn about you as a person as well, to get an understanding of what you can take away, even if the business doesn't succeed. And of course, a 3-minute video pitch. In terms of a successful application, we're looking for someone who's got pretty strong responses to the following points, but I caveat this with understanding that this is at a very early stage. We don't expect you to have all the answers, but what we're asking for when we're looking at responses around these areas is more an awareness of where you're at. It doesn't matter if you're very early and you don't have an answer, but I'd rather you tell me we actually don't know and it's something we'd like to figure out, rather than make something up and just hope for the best. But we're looking across responses around the problem that you're trying to solve. What is your solution to that problem? Who is your target market? Who is your team? In terms of the market timing, why is now the right time for your solution? What sort of traction do you already have to date? And again, you don't necessarily need to have any. What is your business model? And most importantly, how can MAP help? We want to know what we can do to help and support you through the program, because that's the way to get the best outcome. In terms of the pitch that we've discussed, it's a 3-minute pitch. We tend to stick to a fairly standard format at this stage, and this information is also available on our website. Introduction, problem, solution, market, business model, traction, competition, team, and what's next. You'll notice that's quite similar to the areas that we covered, or we suggest you look at previously, for good reason. Again, what we're looking for here is just a really good understanding of where is your business at. We don't need you to have the perfect answer to any of these questions, but we'd like to see that you're clearly asking these questions and have a good enough understanding of the challenges that you expect to face. Some advice around developing the pitch: watch as many as you can. Find others who've done it before and see those. We've got a whole bunch on our website and on our library. You don't need to be quite to the same standard as those, as I think most of the ones in the library are after people have completed the accelerator program, but they'll give you an idea of the style and format. Make sure that you practice and memorize it. It's a lot easier to do if you're not reading from the script. Also, make sure you get some feedback. Show your pitch to someone who doesn't know the idea. They'll be able to pick up areas where you're making assumptions or skipping over something, and make sure you're taking that feedback into account. When it comes to feedback, remember that it is all opinion. So you don't have to take all of the feedback you get and apply all of it. Understand that others have a different viewpoint, and it's okay to disagree with what they've said. That said, tends to be pretty valid, so it's worth considering. Don't take any feedback personally when you get somebody to look at your pitch. They're usually not judging you as a person. They're trying to help you grow as a person. So keep that in mind. And lastly, remember who your audience is. In a lot of cases for a pitch, you're looking to try and convince someone. Here, what we're asking for is a clear view of where you're at, the stage your business is, and how we can help. So keep that in mind. Some tips if you're successful for the interview stage: make sure that you come prepared. If you've got case studies or metrics that you think are important, make sure you have that information available and have a good understanding of MAP. We'll lead the interviews, so don't worry about having to direct the conversation. If there's something that we want to know about, we'll ask about it. Give us the opportunity to ask about as many areas as we can by keeping answers concise and accepting feedback and moving on quickly so that we can cover a lot of ground. If you've got real traction and progress, that's always something to bring up in the interview. It shows us that you've put the rubber to the road and you're making a difference, and that helps inform your customer validation. So make sure that you talk about what traction you have, regardless of the form it takes. If there are multiple founders in your team, make sure that you work together. You can practice by asking each other questions beforehand, and make sure you think about who's the expert when it comes to certain topics. Make sure that they're the one that answers that question rather than everybody having to chip in. Let one person answer one question. As I was saying, keep it real. If you don't know the answer to a question, that's totally fine. We expect that at this stage, but we'd rather that you say that than try and make something up to cover a gap in knowledge. And of course, the last piece of advice for any interview is relax and have fun. We're not there to try and assess your marks at university. We're there to figure out if we can help you. So take your time and enjoy yourself. A couple of final bits of advice from me in terms of the application process. Number one is focus on building a great startup. A lot can happen between now and when the application process ends. So make sure you keep focusing on your business and putting that first. Secondly, do make sure you submit the application, because it's very hard to get into the program if you don't submit an application. Finally, if you're interested, we've got a couple more office hours sessions. I've actually opened up a couple more today that are, I think, scheduled for Friday. So take the time, come and see me. I'm very happy to have a chat about the applications and give you a longer version of all of these answers. And of course, please do apply for the program. We'd love to see your applications. And I think I will stop my sharing there and hand back to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Rory. So for those who jumped in while Rory was speaking, so Rory is our Velocity Program Manager, and we are also joined by Ingrid Jones today, who went through our Velocity Program last year. So why don't we take things across to hear from Ingrid? Thank you so much for joining us today. To kickstart us off, how about you share a little bit about your background as a founder and how Journal with Ingrid came about?
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I am my background is a primary school teacher. I'm also a life coach. And my journal business, to be honest, came about as an accident. I was running a series of wellbeing talks. My first one that I did for a group of parents, I had a wonderful friend in that talk who gave me a lot of feedback afterwards, and I realized it really didn't land the way that I had anticipated it to. And I just went, okay, what am I going to do for my next session? It's in a couple of weeks. And I thought, you know what, I'd love to give them a tool, something that they can use that would benefit them in their life. And that was something I never anticipated sharing, and that was my journal process. So I had already changed for myself the way that I had journaled years ago, just thinking I wanted to do it to help myself keep moving forward and dealing with what's going on in my mind in a really healthy way. And so I shared that and took them through this step-by-step process. And from that day of going with a room full of people feeling stressed and overwhelmed to going, oh my gosh, I feel hopeful and clear and calm and possible, like things are possible. I was like, I didn't know what anyone had written about, but I know if they've made that, helped guided people to make that shift, there's something in it. So from there, I just started to teach it as a workshop. So essentially, my business is about providing people with a journal framework, a way to use a tool to look after their well-being and to keep moving them forward, to cut through any of the stress and overwhelm, to find their own ideas and free them up to, have more fun with life. So from there, I turned it online, turned it into these workshops. During the lockdowns, people wanted, I could feel that stress and uncertainty. So I was like, why don't I just start having regular sessions where people can come together, and I'd facilitate a journal session via Zoom. And as the lockdowns continued, and then as they ended, people wanted to continue. So then within, I think, 2 months of doing that, I turned it into a subscription model. And so from there, I've just been varying up how I deliver this framework just to see what works and what's sustainable.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So come quite a far, but still kind of evolving as you go through. So before we get into the audience questions and answers, I'll just say a couple of questions from myself for you, Ingrid.
Oh.
So how about if you can please share with us your experience, what that was like with Velocity Program, and how did the program itself help with your startup journey?
Well, the experience was fabulous. It was so good. There are so many elements that are wonderful about Velocity. So for me, as being a solo founder, it can be very isolating and really tricky at times. So you're put together with this cohort of wonderful people who come from all different businesses or different passions or different ideas that they're exploring. And as Rory mentions, different phases of their startup journey, but because you're all essentially there for your own businesses that everyone's so passionate about, there's this openness, there's this wanting to help and support. So you end up creating this fabulous community that you can draw on even well beyond the program, which I was just saying before, we still do. We still keep in touch and we still support each other. So that's fabulous. The program itself, like the learning each week, there's just so many practical ideas that allow you to just keep tweaking at things and making your business better. And I think that's really invaluable. So what it did is that time has just had me focusing on my business quite intensely, which does really help you move you forward. And even though my idea was already established in terms of the way that it actually works, there's so much growth that I need to do and make changes. But each week I could apply something and change the way that I looked after my customers, or that I found out more information from them, the way I told my story, and that opportunity to pitch at the end was just fabulous. I really would not have been able to get on that stage without Rory being able to really help sharpen my message, get really clear of what I'm trying to communicate so succinctly, which has actually helped me so much in my conversations with other people and other opportunities. Elements of that is constantly drawn in. So yeah, it's helped me in so many ways.
That's really good insights. And yeah, obviously shows how valuable Velocity is for all those attending to jump on and apply. So Rory took us through a bit about the application process. Are you able to share maybe how you found the application process and maybe how you prepared for the 3-minute pitch yourself?
Sure. I actually did all those things Rory mentioned. I watched pictures. That is so great. There are YouTube pictures as well from the ones on the MAP website. They're brilliant. So it's great to sort of get them into your mind. The framework, even though you've got that overview that you've just shared, Rory, in the application process, I remember in the framework, there are these dot points of questions that really break down each section. So I just answered the questions and of course then went and got feedback. I had heaps of feedback, especially during this process. I've learned feedback is wonderful. It's not rejection at all. It's just how to improve it. We can be so close to something. So having somebody else's ideas or opinions often make you see things differently.
Yeah, totally agree with that one. So I feel like you might have touched on this in the first question, but maybe if there was one key thing that you can bring out, what did you find was the most valuable thing that you learnt during Velocity?
It's really hard to narrow it down to one. I'm going to tell you two things. One is to apply things fast, to not be so close to it, to just like try things and try different ways from everything, from the way you talk to your customer to making changes to your product or service, and the cohort, being able to keep asking for help and reach out to people, whether it's to your cohort or to other people as well. Once you're in Velocity, you become part of this wonderful network of people, and they're very generous in, if you're at that point of need, to reach out to other people who have been in your position before.
Yeah.
For example, the other week I just had coffee with the founder of who had previously been through the Velocity and MAP program, and it was just through a different connection of a conversation. Everyone's so generous because they're understanding the nature of the startup life.
Yeah, it sounds like everyone's very generous with their time. Like no matter how busy a founder is, I always hear about other founders saying that they were happy enough to give some help to other founders, which is very cool to see.
And having all the guest speakers in the program, it's so rich. It's really amazing seeing them so passionate about their businesses, but giving you the practical tips as well that you can just draw on what is applicable for you. It's really great. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. Then the final question, just from my end before we open up the floor to anyone else, did you have any advice for other founders who are watching this or perhaps who are considering to apply for Velocity?
apply. Definitely apply. It's so fun. It really does focus you in more ways than you ever realize, kind of thing. And the community, it's so rich. You really do get out of it what you put into it. And I just really made sure it was a top priority to connect with people and build those relationships, as well as learn as much as I can about myself and my own business.
Thank you. Cool. So we will open up the floor to anyone else who wants to ask Rory or Ingrid some questions. Feel free to take yourself off mute and ask, or if you feel more comfortable writing it into the chat and I can ask the questions.
Just while we're waiting for first questions to come in, I just wanted to pick up on what Ingrid was saying about the cohort and the community. I'm so delighted to hear you reflecting that back, Ingrid, because it's something that we really try to do. We really try to make sure that, yes, you get the value of coming to the workshops, going through the content and learning some substantive material, but we recognize that a lot of that material, as your business grows, you'll grow beyond needing that in 6 to 12 months, and a lot of the content stops being quite as relevant. But being able to have that opportunity to learn that content in that cohort and build those relationships that can last a lifetime, I'm always so happy to see the Velocity founders still connecting, still engaging with each other after the program's ended, because that community is the thing that continues to give for years to come.
Yeah, totally agree. Right, so we do have one question so far in the chat from Anne. So Anne has asked, I have attended a startup accelerator program overseas in 2022. Is there still benefits in joining Velocity? Originally, I wanted to apply for the 2023 MAP Accelerator Program, but I think it's closed now.
So I'm assuming, Ingrid, that I'll probably take that one. So yes, the 2023 Accelerator Program is closed. In terms of whether or not you'll get benefits out of joining Velocity, that's something I'm more than happy to sit down and have a chat with you to find a time through office hours, because it'd be great to get an understanding of your situation, the kinds of things that you covered in that other accelerator, and the kind of challenges you have in front of your business at the moment. Because we recognize that people come to a program like Velocity from very different stages. As much as we get some who are there at that very early idea stage who are trying to figure out, is there anything here? We also find that there are a lot of founders who may have found some early traction and some early customers, but recognize that they're not entirely comfortable with how stable that foundation they've built for themselves is. And they actually get a lot of value out of Velocity as an opportunity to sit back and reflect and say, well, I know that we've sort of figured out this customer, but let's go through the process. Let's take the time to make sure that we've really thought about this instead of just kind of doing it because it's there. So depending on the circumstances, you might find some benefit out of Velocity still having previously done an accelerator. So I'd be more than happy to have a chat and go through the details.
Yeah, definitely someone to check out the office hours, perhaps, to get in a good conversation.
Yes, and I'll just drop the link to that in the chat.
Cool. So Sarah has asked, did you find the process of pitching at the Velocity Showcase helped you to further refine your value proposition? And I'm guessing this is towards you, Ingrid.
Yes, absolutely. I sure did. And by the time the pitching came around, it was quite, like you were further enough in the content of the course so that you could, or the program, that you could really apply what you've learned. What I found was I realized I'd been saying things a certain way. It didn't always mean that it was the clearest or the most impactful. And so that process of pitching and having a lot of mentoring with Rory has helped me really refine all that. It was really great.
The other fun one that I'll add in about the preparation for the pitching at the showcase is, I think Ingrid will agree, that part of the value is also the opportunity to see other teams and how they're presenting their pitches and how are they structuring the story of them as founders and them as a business, and how do they weave those threads together to make certain points. And for very different businesses, that can be done in a very different way. And this sort of ties into one of the approaches that we take with Velocity, which is that, and forgive me for getting a bit philosophical because my undergrad degree was in philosophy, but I think I personally take it as that humans are kind of a pattern recognition machine. The way that we deal with a lot of things in life is if we've seen something similar before, we can say, oh, this reminds me of this. I know what to do in this situation because I've seen something similar before. And if you're a founder starting a business for the first time, you don't really have any of those patterns to draw on. You can only go on things that you see in the media, things that, stories that you might happen to hear, or just the connections that you have around you. And that's a very, very limited set of patterns that you can draw on. And particularly if you look at some of the ones in the media, they're not particularly useful. They're either the outrageously successful examples, or they're some slightly fictionalized version that's not really accurate to the real experience. And a big part of the value that we see in Velocity is it's an opportunity to be in that cohort with such a diverse group of founders who are working on a diverse group of ideas. And you get to see 20 to 30 other different patterns for what it can look like starting a business. And you'll find that you'll come into the program with some areas that you're strong in and other areas that you're weak in. And you'll find that you speak to founders who are strong in the areas you're weak and weak in the areas that you're strong. There's these fantastic opportunities to learn from each other and to see, oh, how did you handle your customer interviews? What were the kinds of questions that you asked? Oh, I hadn't even thought about asking that question. Thank you. At the same time, in terms of your website copy, how are you structuring the text? Oh, of course, I haven't had experience preparing text in that sort of format. And you get this fantastic transfer of knowledge by seeing these different ways that a business can be started and different ways that ideas can be put together and structured. So even with something like the Velocity Showcase, it's a fantastic opportunity to see how people are pitching their ideas and think, well, is that something that I should be thinking about? What can I take from that and what can I learn from that? So back of the envelope, I'd say you do probably about 50% of the learning is from me or the guest speakers up the front presenting content, and the other 50% is just this opportunity to see other founders going through the process in similar circumstances, but different enough to be able to learn from them.
I just as you're saying that, Rory, I just want to touch on this thing of feedback again, because when you can tell your friends what you're going to do or what you're working on, they always think it's a great idea, right? Even if they don't have experience of a startup, everything's a great idea because they don't want to hurt your feelings, and they're your greatest, cheerleaders. But you jump into this network of wonderful people who you can just say, how did that come across? Or what was your impression? And you'll get this honest feedback because we're all in that same position. It's so, so valuable. I remember on the pitching and storytelling night at the dinner break, just straight away, another participant and I were just saying, what's your story? You normally say, what's your story? And straight away we were able to go, this is the part where I didn't feel any emotion at all. And this is the part I wanted to hear about. And it was so instant and caring that it didn't matter if it didn't come out perfectly. So yeah, it's really, really valuable, that part of the connections.
Did anyone else have any questions before we wrap up anything?
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm in a coffee shop, so if there's some background noise,
That's all right.
what it is. I just wanted to say I've been to a few Velocity events over the last couple of years, and Ingrid, I was actually there when you pitched your idea to the audience. And it was really exciting to see how everyone was so positive and so encouraging. And your idea was really good around well-being and assisting that. So I guess I've got two questions. One is for Rory, which is around how many concepts did you take in before they had their first customer? So if there was a slightly more complex idea that had the founding team behind it, had the MVP sketched out, but not necessarily built, how early is too early to engage with Velocity? And the second one I had for you, Ingrid, which is around what was the nugget that you took away and implemented in your business Because it sounds like there was a lot of business coaching, so a lot to do with mindsets and refining the idea. But what was that sort of one thing that moved the dial for you as well? Thanks, guys.
So in terms of how early is too early, for velocity, realistically, I don't think there is a too early. Now, I'll caveat that slightly with, we expect you to have at least an idea, something that you're interested in pursuing and some understanding of why you want to pursue that. But in terms of the comment you made about minimum viable products as MVPs, I'm actually, this is again going into slightly personal opinion, but I actually feel like these days a lot of people are treating the MVP as though it's a version 1. And we see people saying, oh, I just need to hire a couple of developers to build out an MVP, and I just need to do this just to get my MVP done. And I'm actually from the school of thought that the earlier and simpler your MVP is, the better it is, because it gets you that customer feedback as quickly as possible. If you can put together an MVP that's, a Squarespace website that plugs into a Google Doc on the back end just to show people what it could do and that it can work, that's great. You don't need to spend the time, in some cases, developing the whole thing. And I'd rather actually have somebody who's willing to look at that and say, yep, I'm willing to test something really quick and dirty, really early, to learn as much as I can from as early as possible. Whereas sometimes when people come through the program and they've spent a lot of time and effort on that MVP, one of the hard things I have to sit down with them and say is, you're testing the wrong things. You've built this product that nobody wants yet, because when you turn it on and test it, nobody's using it. So I certainly don't think that there's such a thing as too early, as long as you have an idea that you're trying to pursue. I'm certainly not saying that, if you're at that slightly more mature stage that, there's nothing of value to be gained. I think a lot of it is, as I said, in reflecting on what have you done today, has it actually been testing the things that you need to test? And what do you want to do from here to find those answers about what's the right path for your business moving forward? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, so I guess in that instance, have you had people go through the program that have not had a paying customer or a built-out model per se? You have?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we try to do in that case is not necessarily sit down and say, here is who your customer should be, here is the model you should use, but try to make sure that they've got an understanding of what are the different ways you go about finding that first customer? What are the different kinds of business models that are likely in your industry or with that particular market niche, so that the founders can come through and not necessarily have the right answer now, but have the tools to be able to find the right answer when they come across the question.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And I think the other question was to you, Ingrid. What was that nugget, that gem?
It's a combination of two things. So it was from the beginning of with our customer interviews of really like delving into the problems that people are facing, or in my particular wellbeing area, like journal writing. And then with the storytelling and pitching, I communicate completely differently with either customers or with potential customers. And I'm not afraid to just have that discussion more about where they're at, what they might be doing or not doing. And even if they say, I don't journal, I'll quite happily go, oh, okay, why don't you? Like, as in, just tell me more. What do you use or what don't you use? And I'm not so taking it personally of whether people engage with my stuff. And I find the more I let go and always find out where they're at, the more they're inclined to come back to me or are more interested in remembering they end up remembering more about what I do than if I just did my elevator pitch and then walked off kind of thing. So yeah, I engage very differently with people now.
Sounds like you've got some good sales techniques nutted out there.
Yeah, but it's all very genuine. That's the best part about Velocity too. You just keep your feet on the ground and you just keep finding out information and getting feedback and just exploring more rather than trying to, like, I don't know. Yeah, it's just a very natural way.
It's really important to get the right advice at the right time. So I think it sounds really good. Thank you both.
That's okay. And thank you for coming to the pitch night. That's so lovely to hear that you saw my pitch. It was wonderful.
Yeah, quite like heartwarming to, Thank you for the questions. Final chance for anyone else in the audience to ask anything.
Just while we're waiting to see if there's any asked questions, Ingrid, I've got one for you. What, if anything, would you do differently if you were doing Velocity again?
As a participant?
As a participant.
The main thing would be don't take so long to get to know people because usually, you know, it does take a good 3 months to get to know somebody, but just jump in a little bit more at, like in the earlier end of the program. And two, I think that would be the main thing. Yeah, I think that would be the main thing.
Just thought I'd throw a curveball.
Yeah, that was a good one. Probably go over my notes more often.
One more from Godwin in the chat, which I think is for you, Ingrid, which is what experience or information did you really wish to get from Velocity, but you didn't get in Velocity?
Oh, good question. What experience?
So I suppose it's a sort of what did you find was missing from Velocity?
Yeah. I'm not really sure because I didn't have much of an expectation when I went in, as in I didn't know what I was going to be experiencing. It was my first Velocity program. Probably I really loved the way that we did those weekly overviews. Each week there were these reports that you put in and you got they get uploaded. It's absolutely fabulous. So you can actually see everybody else's progress. I probably would have liked to have them be spoken about a little bit more, where you talk about where people are what they're up to, kind of thing. Like, because I used to read them, and so I love learning about each other's businesses. But it started to drop off towards the end. So I feel like there needed to be more encouragement of that happening so that we actually all knew each other's weekly journeys a little more closely.
I'm delighted to hear that you picked up on something that's already on my list of tweaks and changes for the upcoming program.
Perfect.
So we will certainly be doing that.
But I think that's a fabulous thing to have done, like those weekly reports. I loved having to submit them, even that, you know, and even that was a choice, but I loved seeing them there.
Anne asks, is there any opportunity to find co-founders from within the MAP program? Finding co-founders is a very challenging thing. At risk of using a difficult analogy, I think that the numbers are something like the average length of a marriage in Australia is something like 7 years, and the average time from founding to exit of a successful startup is about 7 years. So realistically, it's like trying to find a life partner. My view on it is that it's the kind of thing where the best approach is to put yourself out there, to talk to as many people as you can and try and share the idea that you have and the passion that you have for that idea to as many people as possible, to try and increase the number of chances you have to be lucky and find that person. Because I don't think you can create luck, but you can create opportunities to be lucky by creating that exposure to the ecosystem. We don't have any strict structures for it because it's such a personal thing. At the same time, we're very happy to try and make connections and help you build the relationships into the industry and into the ecosystem to be able to find someone who might be a co-founder. We don't have a strictly structured process for it. Again, very happy to have a chat in office hours about this to go into further detail. But mindful of the time, I might just wrap up my response to that one there and hand back to you, Helen.
Cool, thank you for that. But yeah, if anyone does have any more questions, the slides will get sent to you with some contact details and stuff like that you can book in office hours or send an email for any last minute burning questions that you have. So to wrap things up, I just want to say a huge thank you to Ingrid. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your incredibly busy day to share your journey and insights with us all. Your generosity is so greatly appreciated by the MAP and MEC teams and by everyone who has joined us online for the session today. But yeah, any last minute words from you, Ingrid, at all?
I was just going to say thank you for having me on. It's lovely to be able to chat about the program, and I think it's so valuable. It's so worth applying for. So I would encourage anyone to do it.
Thank you. Cool. So yeah, a reminder that applications close this Sunday, the 26th of March. So be sure you get onto that, as Rory said, early or on time. If you haven't already, make sure that you're subscribed to our MAP newsletter, which can be found through our website, or follow us on social media just to get the latest updates on applications or events and all the fun stuff that we get to get up to at MAP. But yeah, so wrapping things up, goodbye everyone, and thank you for joining us.